Hello, welcome to my second Miss of Pandaria video. This one's about raid compositions. Keep in mind that this video comes from my experience on private servers, and so it should be taken with a grain of salt, as Classic might have different balance changes to help struggling specs. Before we get into it, I'd like to thank everyone who watched my first video and inspired me to make more content. I'll try to keep this one short as well. Let's get right into it. We will start with 10-man groups. If you're only interested in 25-man groups, there will be a timestamp in the description below. Each tier will have one safe raid group that focuses on both fair loot distribution and the group's overall survivability in case of mistakes. And the second group that's aimed at people who are experienced and looking to clear the raid as fast as possible, going as far as doing split runs ahead of time between tiers. This here is your Tier 14 through Tier 16 safe raid comp for 10 men, aimed for a balanced loot distribution with every raid buff present and a battle resort too. I don't believe you can really alter this raid comp much further between raid tiers. Your main group members are in the first two groups. Then you can take either a mage or a death knight for the last raid spot. If you are making a lot of mistakes and people die often, take the death knight so you can have a second player that can battle res. Once you are in tier 16, you may even drop the elemental shaman for a second warlock, but that's a bit advanced, and elemental works just as well during the progression. The thing about this raid comp is that it happens to be good enough for tier 14 speed clearing as well, since elemental shaman brings damage early on, even without gear, and warlock, while not as strong yet, serves as the utility and the battle res class of the group. In tier 15, this is your go-to speed kill group. You replace the elemental and the death knight, bring a second hunter and an affliction warlock. So 2 affliction and 2 hunters. The reason for that is simple. You want the second hunter to bring the raid buffs, and you want the 2 athletes to kill everything. The way affliction works in Mist means that if they ever have to battle res, they lose their snapshot dots. So only run a comp like this if you're okay with not having any battle reses in your group. This comp is also what you will be using during tier 16 progression. Once tier 16 is done, and everyone is in full BIS with 4 out of 4 upgrades, you can go out and try a raid comp like this. This group ignores utility and goes all in on damage, gets stat buffs from Scroll because we don't even have a Monk, Druid, or Paladin anymore, and aims to demolish bosses in under a minute or two. You can always have just one healer and the other play their off-spec or a DPS ult. We use Prot Warrior here, a controversial pick, purely because at max eye level, the healers simply counteract its weaknesses, and the second Skull Banner is really good for the DPS. As for 25 men, the group is much more fluid even in the earlier tiers. Mists is one of the first expansions where you can bring a player even if they are playing an off-meta class, as long as the player is really good on that class. 10-man doesn't really allow for much diversity, but every spec gets to be played in 25-man. Here's an example of a balance raid comp for 25-man raiding in tier 14. We have some amount of hunter stacking, but the rest of the group is fairly balanced. We do want to stack hunters in tier 14 as they are one of, if not the highest DPS spec in tier 14, even without gear. They also don't lose uptime while doing mechanics or moving. Overall, if you're in a casual guild, just make sure you don't bring too many, or else the loot might get a bit stressful. Here is the more tryhard version of the tier 14 25-man roster. We drop most casters for even more hunters and some unholy DKs. Tanks can be Brewmaster or Blood DK. The goal of a comp like this is to clear Heroic in one day, so you want to funnel your tanks loot, while the DPS do just well enough with dungeon gear. Once we enter tier 15, a lot of specs become viable, mostly thanks to the caster's legendary metagem. Once your warlocks get their snapshot trinket, metagem, you may wanna swap to affliction and play around them. If the spec is simply too hard for your warlocks to play, no problem, they can go back to playing destruction. You don't have to play affliction to clear the raid. But in that case, maybe don't stack them. You also want 2 Death Knights for mass grip in this raid tier. It's really important for Leishan. At the same time, you don't want to drop under 2 Warlocks, even if they are playing Destruction, because you will want gateways for both Majera, Rodan, and even Leishan. In the speedrun group, we are copying the 10-man setup, and we are stacking Affliction Warlocks. This can be the theme of the rest of the expansion. Get Snapshot Trinket, stack Affliction Warlocks. It's also nice to bring each Affliction Warlock a robe so they can take their snapshotting further with the tricks of the trade. And finally, we arrive at tier 16. We get our Legendary Cloak, and we unlock the late game specs: Fire Mage, Beast Mastery Hunter, Guardian Druid, and more. The only wall you will have in 25-man raiding is the belt during Black Fuse, so make sure you're gearing your hunters appropriately and you're stacking some amount of hunters. If you don't have hunters, rogues can do their jobs just fine too, but hunters always have an easier and safer time on the belt. The tryhard 25-man comp doesn't change much from tier 15. There will be a debate on whether you're pulling trash into bosses or not. If you're pulling trash into bosses, you will enjoy enhancement shamans. If you're not, just stack more affliction warlocks. Go all the way up to 10 affliction warlocks. If it's not nerfed, they will melt everything. That's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you comment under below if you have any questions, and peace out.